Agility Matters. Tonight we've got Niall McShane on. We're going to be talking about not only his experiences that led him to do this wonderful book that I've read now twice, but we're also going to chat about current experiences in the Agile coaching community and what, I guess, brought him to want to bring this wonderful book to the scene. Hey, so welcome, Niall.
G'day, everyone.
How you going? You having a good day?
Yeah,
I heard you bought a cat.
I did. I bought a cat today, which I'm sure everyone watching wants to know all about. Not?
Yeah, it's personal things, right? That's what coaching is all about. So let's start off with the nice, easy one. We've got a first question that came straight through, right? So Colot was nice enough to say, what did he put here exactly? What are the key problems that responsive coaching can address, and why does it matter solving them?
Yeah.
Rock straight into it, Niall. What do you think?
Yeah. So that's what I wrote the book about. So the problem, I wrote responsive agile coaching to solve pretty much one problem. So when you're with a client, what competency do you use? So if a client's in front of you, they're in your face and they're looking to you and you're on and you're a coach and it's your time to do whatever that is, you have a choice to make. And if you think about the way we've talked about agile coaching from a competency perspective to date, it would look something like, you'd have all of these little squares, which would sort of be teaching, mentoring. I'm going to be a professional coach now, and I might do some facilitating. I might be an expert. But the question is, I'm in front of the client, right? Here's my client. Really bad drawer. Here's my client and here's me, and here's a communication space. What do I put into that communication space to serve that client in that moment? Which competency do I use and when? And how do I time that? So the responsive agile coaching model is my attempt at explaining when and where do we use professional coaching versus teaching, mentoring, or facilitation, or just simply be an expert in IT or business transformation. Because if you think of a static set of competencies as one way to view a coach, I would put it to you, I would challenge you to say, agile coaching as a verb is not something you can chop into its individual pieces to define it. So responsive agile coaching gives a model that is more around the verb that is coaching. That's why it's called agile coaching, responsive agile coaching. And it's what you do as a coach in the moment to execute the right competency at the right time to achieve the outcome for the client. That's the problem it solves. I think it's the enablement of others to adopt a different way to work, and we can call that agile, but it started to sort of bleed into other sort of concepts or domains like human-centered design or DevOps as enablement and some of that lean thinking. So if you think of agile as that basket of things that defines a different or modern or new way to work, agile coaching is the means by which we help others adopt those practices and the processes. And then we can get into some of the less tangible things around, well, how do we work from a set of principles around agility? How do we have a company that doesn't just talk about agile, but embodies it from a values perspective? So when the chips are really down and the pressure's on and the company really has to sort of show what its values are, do they respond in a way that represents those agile values? And an agile coach has the job of doing all of that. So touching into just dry practices. This is the way you set up a Kanban board, all the way through to sitting with a CFO and saying, the language you used in that last steering committee meeting is creating a culture of fear. I think we need to have a chat about that. They're two extremely different things. And, agile coaches have to, well, I would put it to your audience that a good agile coach can handle all of that. And I think it's fair to say we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and you might be a really deep DevOps expert, and you want to look about how to coach the culture of DevOps, and that's perfectly reasonable. But the way agile coaching is starting to shape up with professional coaching and mindset work, having a real home in Agile coaching now, right? We can't ignore the cognitive or the internal world of people now. When we talk about Agile, we can't just say it's about the establishment of a playbook, or practice set. We've gone way beyond that, which I think confuses everyone, Michael, to be honest. That's why we're in this position where, the body of knowledge is so fragmented and all over the place. People don't know what a coach is, hence, I suppose, your question.
Yeah, and I only heard this probably last week, and I'm hearing it again and again and again. Oh, but Michael, if you put 12 coaches in a room and ask them what adult coaching is, they'll give you 15 different answers. That just makes us look a bit like clowns, right? Like we don't really know what we're talking about. Like we're making that up on the fly.
Yeah.
I think you put in the first chapter of this book, and I was like, yes. You put how it used to be process orientated, but the world has changed. Like, why do you think we're not changing? We promote adapting to new environments, and yet the agile coaching scene 10 years ago to today seems to be very similar. Why do you think we're not adapting?
Because of the agile industrial complex. I think it's quite simple. The people are creating business models and certifications out of their opinion about what something is, and it cannot keep up with what's happening in the field. So I'll give you two examples, Mike, will probably bring it to life. And this, by the way, isn't about bashing certifications or frameworks. That's not the game I'm in, but it's a good way to, I suppose, answer your question. So if you think about what Safe 5 has just done and talked about uncommitted work inside a program increment, right? They've just put that in. Like, hello, we've been doing program increment planning for a long time, I have, and we've always used different coloured sticky dots for uncommitted and committed work, and they've just put that in the framework as a thing. We've been doing it for 5 years. Another example, the Scrum Guide. Who doesn't talk to their team about making a commitment around the sprint goal? Come on, we all have, right? It wasn't in the Scrum Guide. The only thing the team made a commitment to in the other Scrum Guide 4 or 5 weeks ago was the reason the team exists, the team's goal, not the sprint goal, not the definition of done, not the product goal. So we had teams not making commitments to anything. So, all good coaches know you need to talk about the commitment to the team, and that the team needs to own the outcomes. They need to meet their promises so that people have faith in the predictability of outcomes. So I think because we've been hijacked by people who write things down, sell certifications, the practitioners, the body of knowledge in the practitioner community is ahead of that. And it takes a while to sort of factor it back in. And my book is going to have the same problem in 3 or 4 years. It won't be what's going on at the coalface, but maybe that's just a symptom of a fast-moving industry.
Yeah, and I think somebody actually mentioned on LinkedIn when I posted up we're going to be doing this session, like, make it audiobook. And in my head, my first reaction was, yes, brilliant, audiobook. But the amount of time it takes you to do the audiobook, I reckon you'll have a version 1.2 to go on the audiobook. So you mentioned that pretty much 5% of coaches, were the mustard, right? Why do you think it's such a small percentage?
Are you quoting me back to me, Michael? What's that?
Yeah. So I think you mentioned that you interviewed a couple of hundred people, and only like 5% of those actually, were senior coach level, that they understood the new way of working in the environment. They didn't just report back to you the Scrum Guide. I'll give you an example from my point of view. The first time that I ever met a coach was a Scrum coach. And I was explained that a Scrum coach is literally somebody who sticks to the Scrum Guide and will coach you through the Scrum Guide. And I come from accounting and strategy background. So for me, I was like, a coach is somebody who helps you set goals and holds you accountable to those goals. It's professional coaching. So I was very confused that it was just basically Scrum Guide. So I feel you. I've interviewed many people myself, and I find it's probably less than 5% here in New Zealand. But why do you think we have that such problem? Is it just certifications, or is it what people are expecting of us?
Yeah. I think it's the latter. The example you're giving me was when I had a specific type of person I was trying to hire for, which was, I suppose, a true, well-rounded senior agile coach that can do mindset work as well as has extensive experience at scale. and they're difficult to find. And I think because of the transition of moving away from just process-centric agile implementations to more of this, holistic mindset work, a lot of the people I've been interviewing just didn't have that. They just couldn't sit with a leader and talk about emotions. And it was almost comical when I was interviewing some people and I said, tell me about how you use emotions. And I mentioned it in the book, tell me about how you use emotions to achieve coaching outcomes. And the look on their face was just priceless. It's like, what are you talking? I'm a bloke. First of all, I'm an Australian bloke. We don't do emotions, right? I'm not talking about that stuff. And the person actually said to me, that sounds quite coercive or manipulative. And I said, what are you talking about? Emotions drive our behaviour. So if you're coaching a senior stakeholder and you're sensing there's some heat in the conversation, that is awesome. You've got some provocation. You've perturbed their sense of self and identity, and there's maybe an opportunity to grow into a new version of them as a manager leader. So that was the sort of stuff I was looking for. And even 2 years ago, I think, Michael, the professional coaching competency in the Agile coaching community was only really just starting to get going. And nowadays I can't probably spend a week without seeing someone on LinkedIn saying I've got my ICF qualification, which I think is amazing and fantastic.
Yeah.
But ICF, professional coaching, you don't do that as an Agile coach, all right? And I say it in the book, it doesn't just bolt into Agile coaching. It's just not the same, right? You're walking along in the hallway talking to a senior leader. You're not going to sit down and go, right, let's have a structured professional coaching conversation. They'll look at you and go, what are you talking about? I'm going to my next meeting. So we need the competency of professional coaching, and you need to do it in the moment, right there, right when they say that wrong thing. You can execute some skill based on professional coaching competencies, but it's not just professional coaching, and I think that's just hard to hire for. Hence the 5%.
And just go the other way. I'm finding a real polar. To the what's going on in our industry. You've got process coaches, which are really good, and they're very good at rolling out Scrum. You get your 40-50% productivity gains. It's good to see. I'm not bagging them whatsoever. They're definitely for a place. But I'm now seeing a divergence probably the last 2 or 3 years. And it probably is the ICF style. It's people doing a bit of research in psychology. They're realizing that they probably want to be more of a leader than actually an agile coach. Agile coach is a leader, but I think they want to go more into leadership. And what I'm finding now is that now they're not talking about results. They're not talking about telling people anything. And that's what I loved about your ideas in your book is you focus on responding and either telling or showing or instructing, whichever word you want to use, or going through the coaching aspect. You're actually making an actual conscious decision. Whereas you're totally correct. From a coaching point of view, you would sit and listen and you really want those aha moments from your customers. What I'm finding now is we've gone too far. Some people have gone too far and they're not holding themselves accountable for any results. They're not taking any responsibility for their facilitation and they're not seeing any dramatic change in their environment and they just blame the leaders. Are you seeing something similar?
I totally agree, mate. I 100% agree. And that's why people aren't hiring Agile coaches anymore, not as much as they used to, right? Apart from a couple of big corporates in Sydney at the moment that are going crazy, but it's moving into this whole delivery leadership space. And one large centre of expertise I know has just split out their centre of delivery away from the ways of working because of that, because it's just got too, I call it sort of over-coaching. And you get too caught up in the creation of safety and that we're all getting along and everybody says it's a sustainable way to work and everyone's friendly and blah, blah, blah. And you need the edginess. If I see people getting a little bit too comfy, I introduce edginess. I re-provoke, as I say in the book, right? You cannot let people settle. And it's not a matter of making them feel anxious or not safe. It's just about continuous improvement and growth. And it's not the coercion to make them feel upset or anything. But so I have noticed that, and I think it means responsiveness is even more needed. So and some of the things I've been doing recently, and I'm exploring in my massive and open online course, which I've just started this week, the pilot, is this idea of your style of a coach. And whether you're what we call an amiable social style, where you want everyone to get along, or a driver, or an analytical, right, or an expressive who talks a lot, it doesn't matter. All of those are wonderful. Just like you said, there's no wrong answers to who you are as an agile coach. You want to go process, and that rocks it for you, and you're awesome at it. Knock yourself out. Just don't be pretending you can do all these other things, right, when you can't. And I'd be the first to say I know a bit about DevOps, but probably just enough to get myself into trouble, right? So I would be bringing in people and saying, you know, that's something I can do a high-level assessment on, but I'll need to bring in, you know, a propeller head techo to sort of do the really deep work. And likewise, you know, people. Well, I'll give you a story. Probably brings it to life. I had a junior coach coming up once from the team. She was coming up from working in teams, and she said, "Niall, I've got to meet this bigwig director, and it's my first sort of opportunity to do mindset coaching with a leader. What should I do?" And my answer was super, super simple. I said, there's only one outcome from that conversation that you need to achieve. You need to get invited back for a second conversation, and that's it. No special technique, no, just get invited back, because if you're not engaged with that person, so that moves from sort of telling and giving your opinion to just opening the space and simply being there and responding to exactly what you see emerging in the moment with that leader. Because you go there with an agenda and you start putting things onto senior people, and you're like, well, who are you? You to tell me what to do. So yeah, so there's some of that. There's some things that have been bubbling around on social style and how we need to adapt who we are to different situations.
Yeah, and I'm the first to admit, I like to think of myself as someone who can put a different hat on, but I have a real weakness for people who don't want high performance. And I'll be fully admitting it. If you can't commit to something high performance, I'm done. Find somebody else. And that's my weakness. And I'm happy with that. So I love that different styles. It's pretty cool. Do you think there's a difference in skill or difference in outcomes for a Scrum Master versus an Agile coach?
Yeah, well, we're getting into one of these dogmatic, semantical, sort of evangelical things, aren't we? I have a bit of a rule I have with myself, Michael, right? If I get stuck arguing about that sort of stuff, I've lost my way. So that's why I wrote a book on Agile coaching, right? So Agile coaching is a competency that anybody should be able to execute. Hopefully after reading my book, they'll have a bit of a roadmap on what to do. So if you're a Scrum Master and you want to do Agile coaching, then my book will be very helpful. If you want me to sit down and define, you know, what an Agile coach is as an individual, sure, you could read my book and assume that Agile coach as a role would map into that, which it would. But I think it's a better way to frame it is to say, you know, what's the job we've got to get done here? And is Agile coaching the right tool to achieve that outcome, right? And it doesn't really matter then who's doing it, whether it's a Scrum Master or a product owner, or the person who's the receptionist or the floor warden. I don't think it really matters, does it?
I totally back you up on that. So one of my, I guess, future thought processes for our industry, that's one of the questions I want to ask you. So no, I'll ask you first. Okay, what is the future of Agile practitioners? So put them all together. You've got Scrum Masters, delivery agents, Agile coaches, enterprise coaches. I don't know, whatever names there are now, but there's lots of names out there. What's the future? What does 5 years look like for us?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Let me consider it. I think the competency-based view that started when we had that really nice picture with those things that I put up before about facilitation and everything, I think that was a really solid piece of work. So I don't think the competencies that we will all need to execute Agile roles is going to, you know, markedly be different. There might be a bit coming in around AI and DevOps and a few of those fringy things. But for us behavioural sort of coaches or agents of change, I really do think it's coaching as a culture is really where I think we need to get to, so that if you really want to get to Peter Singer's, you know, learning organisation, and this is sort of how I wrapped up the book. It's like he put that out as this abstract thing, but didn't tell us what are the practices to do it, right? And I think Agile brings it to life in a very concrete way and allows us to move towards being a learning organisation. And I've just presented on a panel before this call, and one of the topics was, you know, what does a good leader look like? And I think leader as a coach, leader as a facilitator. And I was talking to a colleague who's a lecturer at one of the schools of entrepreneurship at a local uni, and you know, he's looking at all that stuff in leadership. You know, leaders as facilitators, leaders as coaches. So I think we're going to loosen up on the roles a little bit. I think they'll always be needed. You know, the really concentrated form of agile coaching will still be embodied in the role, I would say. It'll always be there. But I would hope that when all the agile implementations start failing, and we need people who can go in and really execute in rapid pace to turn around problem programs or organizations, so that's when the agile coaches will start to be used properly. And all the imposter coaches who are saying they can do this, this, and this, but really can't, will be washed out of the system, and they'll go back to their learning journey and, you know, be a bit more humble about what they can and can't do. So it's a good one, mate. I think we're tied to the industry in a way. I think as the speed of change and the speed of innovation, and then the associated speed of learning that's going to be required in organisations. And Safe 5, as you know, is now all around organisational agility, business agility. So like Agile's jumped out.
Because that's the benefits.
Yeah.
They're the real benefits. I find it really strange. There's this great image. It was David, is the business agility manager. I think your title is David, sorry, at Vodafone. And he posted up on his Facebook page, and it was this picture of the whole organization. And it zooms in, and it zooms in, and it zooms in. And there's some guys doing some, obviously, Kanban with some sticky notes. That means nothing. This is where the value lays for competitive advantage. Yeah. So yeah, true adaptive organizations is where we want to get to. I have a bit of a bias, Niall, for that. I sort of laid you into that, but I'm glad we agree. I'm hoping that this ramp up of Scrum Masters and coaches declines massively. The reason why I say that is because whenever I'm going into an organization and I'm building up internal capabilities, my first step is to go, right, the leaders here, are they coach material? So I did my MBA. I had a good professor called Suze. She's a leadership developer, and it was all around super leadership. And I was like, perfect. So that's what they're teaching leaders. That's where we should be going. All we're doing is helping them on ways of working and culture change around agility. And it's like, if we can impart that knowledge onto leaders who are already in the organization to go forth and make massive change, yeah, we don't benefit financially, but we grow the organization that we want, how we want to. So I'm glad we agree on that, because that's kind of one of my main things I get bugbeared on when people say, I can't leave the organization. Why? You've done your job. You've now empowered someone. The teams don't need you anymore. Leave.
Yeah, so that's interesting, and it really brings up something that you've raised in my mind when you were talking. It's the internal coach as a change agent versus, you know, people who come in from the outside. I've done both, and I left the organisation when I lost my edginess, when I was starting to play politics more than, you know, provoking and perturbing people. When I started to become a bit fearful of the you know, the deck chair I needed when the music was stopping. That sort of stuff. So, you know, you lose your bravery a bit.
We've got a question for you. I don't know if you can see that. So a lot of companies and leaders have been burned with failed agile transformations before they get an allergic reaction when they hear the A word. How do you approach these companies and leaders?
I spoke to a really one of the SAFE fellows, I won't say who it was, and we were working with a client together, and he said, you know what, Noel, we just have to let this one fail and crash. They'll come back. And I think sometimes you just need to let the train crash, right? Pardon the pun. Yeah. That's a bit facetious. To answer the question directly, you drop the language, you drop the nomenclature, you talk about outcomes, you talk about value, you say, what's the problem you need me to solve? Forget agility, I don't care about it, you know, whatever. And just meet them where they are. And I think you can do a lot with sort of traditional PMO waterfall stuff to get agility moving before you even talk about any agile language. You know, adaptive planning was part of, well, I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure it was in PMBOK, right? So, you know, it's like rolling wave, adaptive planning, all this sort of stuff coming, you know. So if they were really scared of it and they've been burnt, I'd try and find out what happened and where it went wrong and try and scale it back down and get some proof points, drop the language, talk about value, get a business sponsor who is willing to get in first and has a really pressing issue. I remember a while ago, I was sponsored into an absolute train wreck of a release train, and the people who be listening would probably hear this story before, but you know, they had 764 3-point stories all stuck in regression testing, and they were trying to pull each one out at a time into production. And I went in there and I was supposed to help fix, right, this program. And it's the only time, Michael, that I recommend that they revert to waterfall. I said, folks, stop trying to pull stuff out of test and into production, because you keep breaking things and creating more bugs. Just leave it there for 6 weeks and test the crap out of it and move the whole lot in a big release. You know, sponsor love that, right?
But that's the problem, right? We're told that Agile is Scrum, that Scrum Masters are about driving Scrum process. And where's the empiricalism? Where's the actual measuring? Where's the actual understanding of, is customer value actually increasing? I mean, we've been involved in similar LinkedIn discussions, and I think we've backed each other up a few times. I think two of those that come to mind is one, I think I mentioned last year sometime, waterfall can be agile too. And I fully believe that. I believe you can use agile values and have a good waterfall process. And a lot of project managers, as you say, will remember that. Change managers will be going, been doing this for years. What's the big deal? And as long as you're continuously improving and measuring, like how many people don't measure, which is actually our next question.
There's a question for you, Michael. So would you take would you take a waterfall program with an agile mindset or an agile program with a waterfall mindset?
It's mindset all day long.
There you go.
But I guess for me, I have a slight bias on that. It's because, you know, process can always change. Mindset, you know, I just, what's it saying I used to say? Takes you 3 minutes to learn Scrum. Takes you 3 weeks to roll out Scrum. Takes you 3 months to get some results from Scrum. Takes you 3 years to change a mindset and culture. So if I had to undo 3 years, I wouldn't like that. But if I could just, let's go try waterfall. Let's go try it. See what happens.
Yeah.
Oh, look, time to market decrease. Was that a bad thing? Probably.
Yeah. Because if the head's in the right place, you can move forward with a growth mindset, can't you?
Yeah. So we have a similar question, actually. So how do we measure continuous improvement? It's usually a multi-year journey. Is there a low-hanging fruit to get results early? Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
There's a lot of there's a tier 1 company at the moment that's, everyone I talk to, they're doing their same playbook. Implement a QBR. Yeah. You know, launch domains or groups or tribes, or villages is the new one. But they're all...
So what's a village?
A village is a tribe.
Oh, okay. So they're just calling it a village now.
Yeah, it's a village.
Yeah, okay. All right, sorry.
So what was the question again? You distracted me.
That's all right. There we go. How do we measure continuous improvement?
Yeah, continuous improvement.
Horizon 1, 2, 3 kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, so in that playbook, you do a front runner group of people, right, in a village or a tribe or something, and then you test and learn around it. And look, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think the whole idea of doing a big bang is just stupid, unless you've got some company-ending event or threat that you need to radically repivot away from. But generally speaking, you and this is from Jason Little about 20 years ago doing lean change management, right? You just get a kernel, what they used to call a kernel of change, and proof point it, and then just, you know, split and scale or whatever model you want to use as you roll it out. And, you know, how do you measure continuous improvement? That's something that I've actually been asked to solve once in a large corporate, and we focused on impediments, the impediment pathways and the impediment removal process and time to resolution on impediments. And that was one indicator we used. And I suppose how much change you're releasing into the system of work. You know, do you have an improvement backlog on the system of work at the team, tribe, organizational level? And do you run impediments through a pathway, and are they getting removed in a timely manner? And then you've got the psychological safety, I think would be a prerequisite or a leading indicator of a continuous improvement culture. If people are scared, they're not going to improve because they're not going to say anything's wrong, right? So yeah, there's soft stuff, but then there's hard stuff. And I think a lot of that can be codified into your tooling around impediments and other things.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I obviously my thesis was actually on value driven, how much value you can produce. And I linked that back into 5 different sections. And one of the interesting things I thought was quite cool was how employee value links directly to customer value, right? So keep working backwards, right? So if employee value links to customer value links to competitive advantage, better outcomes, work all the way back to what a coach could do, time to market, employee happiness scores, psychological safety, work in progress limits, legitimately causes less stress. So all these little soft skill things, you can then as a coach go, right, that links to that. I can measure this objectively, and I know that this filters on to everything else, right? So I'm with you. It's a hard and new thing to think about, but I really think we can actually measure these things. And even if it's just literally psychological safety, time to market, cost per feature delivered, I don't know, especially if it's the same sort of style features going forward, at least it's something, right? Would you recommend having no measurements for an Agile coach? Because that's a running trend now, right?
Well, I've had some of my most heated arguments. As you know, I've run centres of expertise involving dozens of coaches. I've hired dozens of coaches. Never would I hire somebody without them understanding very clearly what the scoreboard is for success. Never. I remember when I hired my first cohort of coaches for a company once, and we actually sat down and co-created a coaching handbook, which was a principles-based approach to saying, here's the rules of the game. So, you know, I'll give you an example. So one is you will have a coaching backlog for the work you're doing. So the work you do as a coach is visible. And at any time I can come in and I don't have to talk to you. I can simply look at your board and know what you're doing. Now, some people would say, oh, that's very Taylorism, micromanaging. No, it's not. It's making your system of work transparent, your coaching system of work transparent. So then if I can inspect it, we can adapt it together and I don't have to bother you. That's just a lean way of making sure you're working on the right things without getting in your way and making you stop the line to talk to me. That was one. The other one was what you just said before, make yourself redundant. We're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time and to make value, right? So do not make yourself a job is what we put in the handbook. You're not here to make a job. You're here to, you know, achieve outcomes and then move on to the next thing. So, you know.
Simple as that, right? How much reliance does your teams need on you? You know, if you're doing 40 hours a week on one team and you reduce that to 20 hours a week on 3 teams,
But
well done.
Michael, I think in response to the person who's asked that question, I do want to talk the other side of it because I think there's an anti-pattern here as well. So no, just on your question, not that one, mate. On the one about coach performance. So the coach performance one, recently 2 large corporates in Melbourne have hired performance leads for their coaching cohort, for their coaching centre of expertise. So that person's job, I actually interviewed for one of those jobs and I didn't get it because I wasn't, even though, you know, from a capability perspective, I'm all about growth and capability, right? This role was around running a metrics lens across the coaching cohort, about 40 coaches, and using that as a means to drive performance in that cohort. Anti-pattern, right? Anti-pattern. Yep. My response in the application for that job is, this is the way I will do it, the only way I will do it. I will build performance through community. All right? I'm not going to build performance through a metrics-based dashboard and then kick you in the shins to achieve a number.
Yep.
Anyway, so I do think there's some patterns around performance we need to think about. Like, do you give the coach metrics that relate to the teams they're coaching? So product profitability for a product team, if you're coaching them, does the Agile coach take on those KPIs or key results relative to their role? What do you think, Michael? I've got an opinion. I'm interested in yours.
So I got an accounting background, remember? So that's my caveat here, right? So I find it balmy whenever a coach says to me, oh no, it's seeds. I'm dropping seeds for the future. You can't measure that. No, you can. You can totally measure that. What I'm against is saying, and I've seen it, I've seen these spreadsheets. I'm not sure where they're coming from. They're getting more and more frequent now, should we say. 30% of your time should be facilitation. Here's how you should facilitate. Do your stand-ups end in 15 minutes? And things like that. And I'm like, whoa, no, thank you. That's just crazy, right? I don't. My stand-ups could last 30 seconds or they could last 3 hours, and I have no. It doesn't bother me. Outcome-driven though. Outcome-driven KPIs, I think personally the coach can be held accountable for. And I'm happy to hold a coach accountable for that. And just think about things like if a coach comes, so let's say for instance I'm the manager's coach manager, I don't know, and they come to me and say, okay, Michael, here's my objectives for the next 3 months. And you don't achieve those. Well, I'm holding you accountable for that. You told me you could achieve them. So I expect them to go to their teams and go, can I reduce times of delivery by 40%? Can I increase happiness by 12%? Can I increase customer engagement by 40%? Usability by 20%? If you think that you can achieve those goals, I'm going to hold you accountable to them. Am I going to create them for you on a massive overall lens? No. I'm going to create a vision, and I'm going to hope that you're going to move towards that. What do you think?
Oh, well, everything's context. So if you embed me as a coach inside a product team, and that product team has a product goal, based around adoption and profitability of the product, say, for example, and I'm an embedded coach, then I think that I'm then part of that team. So I own that team's goal, right? Inclusive of ways of working stuff, maybe as an enabler thing, right? But if you have me as part of a center of expertise where I float across 8 teams and I'm doing my seed sprinkling, I would have a different set of KPIs. I'd say that's not reasonable for me to say that you need to get that profit of that product. But what I will hold you to is I can visibly see you've established the system of work. I've got those soft scores on engagement of the team. You are being pulled. So people are pulling you. You've got more demand than you have supply, which means you're doing something right from a coach engagement perspective. People love you. So tick. Yep. So they're the sorts of things I'd be looking at. The other type of coach I'm seeing coming up lately is an accelerator coach. So someone who comes in to a system of work for a discrete period of time and breaks through those sort of structural impediments that everyone's been scared to talk about, right? Goes and gets the budget for the continuous delivery pipeline that no one's had the bravery to talk to management about, but they just put up with quarterly releases instead of, fortnightly releases. You break through that and you get the sponsorship on a sort of business case for change. That's another set of KPIs, right? That's very outcome, but time bound. So I'm really interested in that space at the moment, and I think there isn't a one size fits all. I spoke to a COE lead for a bunch of coaches the other day, and she said, I don't think you'd fit with what we do here, Niall, because we're listening a lot, and and I got this sense of, oh my God, look, it's fine. If that's what they want to do is just listen and nudge and tinker and push. It's just not me, all right? I'm at the front end of change. I go in there, I either blow something up and fix it, or I'm establishing something new. That's sort of the coaching I do. So my KPIs, if you said, no, you need to go in there and incrementally nudge the mindset over a 2-year period, I'll go, no, I'm not your coach. Go and find someone else who has that patience, because that's not me.
Or I can do that 1 hour a week.
Yeah, maybe I'll sprinkle 1 hour a week.
Yeah, and so obviously I have a bias for this. This is kind of what we do at Surge, is we're trying to pull away from, we need someone 5 days a week for these 2 teams. I'm I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't. So, to give you an example, a client came to me a few months ago and said, "Hey, Michael, we have 300 people. We have something like 30 Scrum Masters. How do I get rid of them all?" I was like,
"Oh, wait a minute. What problem are we solving?"
Whoa, is this a cost problem? And after a few coffees, I realized what they were really saying was they keep hiring Scrum Masters. They keep hiring Scrum Masters. They've seen no results. They've seen no objective outcomes. And all they keep on saying to them is, we're just sprinkling. We're just sprinkling.
Scrum Guide 2020, mate. Scrum Guide 2020.
Well, yeah.
That answers the question, right? The Scrum Master is responsible for team effectiveness. It is. So anyway, look, I think that's a good Scrum example of what we just discussed before, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, there's no accountability for anything. We're not committing to anything. Well, Scrum Guide now says you are, and it now says the Scrum Master is responsible for ensuring that you're meeting your commitments, which I think is a fabulous build on the old Scrum Guide. So interesting.
I mean, these 30 coaches, they're gonna hate me because I built two bespoke frameworks for this organization where they can phase out Scrum Masters over a year. And I've done it. I'm doing it currently right now. Oh, hello. And the way we look at it is in every organization, you have to ask yourself, are you adding value? Are you in the value chain? Are you adding actual value? And if I was to remove you, will they continue adding value without you? And that's where I judge Scrum Masters and coaches. I don't believe there's many differences between the role. For me personally, I love a practitioner to turn into a Scrum Master, a Scrum Master to turn into a coach to turn into a leader. Why do I say that? It's because they take on more teams. They require less impact on every team. That's my view. I think this is a good example of how you do that. So one of the questions I had for you was, you're getting some criticism. It's simmering, right? The whole tell. You can't tell teams what to do. Why is telling actually important? And what missed opportunities will you have if you don't take that direct approach?
Yeah, so there's times where we need, okay, wait a minute. Take a step back. Agile coaches are subject matter experts in Agile. Agree or disagree, Michael?
I agree. Yep. Well, it should be.
Right. So you know the subject matter and the body of knowledge, right? Now, nothing is as frustrating when someone comes to you with a question and they answer it with a question.
It depends.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? No, we've got the tribe launch, tomorrow. I'm setting up blah, 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 blah. I just need some advice on how to do it. I've never done it. I don't want a big, long growth conversation to work out my, integral sense of who I am in this particular moment. I just need some information. Can you please tell me the answer? Okay, I will tell you the answer. Now, that's a perfectly reasonable thing for a subject matter expert to do when someone has a tricky, complex problem where they've got no learnt experience or knowledge in it. Now, if you're telling me that an Agile coach should never tell people the answer to the questions that are put to them, then I'd say that that's a ridiculous statement.
It avoids accountability, doesn't it?
Well,
They're
Agile
pulling
coaches,
themselves out of accountability.
If anybody's ever been in an Agile coaching environment with a large number of coaches, you will know that most of what they do is give answers to questions.
Yep.
Most of it, right? And I know we're shifting as an industry towards opening and holding the space and doing all this more longitudinal work, right, on mindset. I get it. But I would still argue 80% of your work is going to be helping people with information in context, right? A good coach gives the information in context. As you said, don't just throw a Scrum guide at them, but you pull the practice or the artifact at that point in time and you apply it in the moment as it's required for that person's problem. That's what a coach does. And that's telling people. I'm sorry.
Yeah. When do you, and I have an example for this, so I'll ask a question first, I'll give my example, because today, funny enough, when do you tell and then stop if they don't agree?
I've got into debates, maybe, I'm just trying to think, maybe in the last, say, 5 years, I've got into debates when I'm coaching, maybe 4 times. And every single time I would be in the middle of it going on like this, right? And I go, what, in my mind, I'd say, what are you bloody doing, Niall? I'd catch myself and go, what are you bloody doing? Stop. This goes nowhere, achieves nothing. It doesn't help anything or anybody, right? It delivers zero value. In fact, it does the opposite. And I did it in front of one of the CEO's team members at this large corporate once, right? And it's just stupid. I don't know even why I was doing this presentation, lean versus agile. Like, why would you even present such a stupid topic, right? Anyway, I ended up in this debate about it with a whole bunch of lean enthusiasts, right? You know how crazy they are, right? They get so dogmatic about lean this and lean that and Toyota this and Toyota that. Anyway, I think if you find yourself,
they do.
If you find yourself in a debate, you just got to stop, pull yourself back and go, you're talking about the wrong thing. But in direct answer to your question, you catch yourself pretty quickly and even change your physical posture. You know, if you're going into a conversation, you can even just sort of take a breath and say, "Whoa, yeah, that was interesting. Let's take a breather. Look, what's going on here? What do we really need to solve for here? And start to think about a co-created way forward using dialogue."
My example.
You've made me think. You know, maybe if you need to create conflict, you can get a debate going, right? Someone's the smiling no.
Yeah.
maybe you do need to create arguments, right? So come on, not really.
Or they just almost like, that's interesting. I'll get back to you on that. I was known as the conflict generator. In fact, anyone who watches this now who's worked with me will probably go, "Oh yeah, Michael, yeah." About 2 years ago, I kind of stopped myself because I found I wasn't actually achieving the customer value that I actually thought. So, example today was we had some great push towards collaboration and restructuring the work, and I was told straight no. Now, other people I know will go into a massive long debate, and probably old Mikey would have gone into a massive long, like, throw my toys. Like, I've done all this work. This is scientifically proven. Please listen to me. But I've realized as well that, because I'm an external, right? I'm always an external. And I'm probably missing something. There's always something I'm missing because I'm not the internal resource. Resource. That's naughty. I'm not the internal asset.
Yeah.
So all I do now is I say, hey, look, here's what that decision's going to make. This is my hypothesis. Are you willing to pivot if that's proven correct? 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. Because either they're so sure. I mean, today was actually fine. I'm actually quite good friends with this person. So, but most time people would just go, yeah, of course, Mike. Yeah, fine. I'll change. 3 months' time, you show the measurements and you say, look, it didn't work. It's not so much a train wreck, but it's a car crash. And people go, okay, well, maybe we'll give half you what you say a go. That's all I ask. But yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one. I have a question. What do you think, what do the people leaders do in an organization with 40 coaches? Shouldn't coaching, mentoring be a big part of the people leader's role? So I guess where he's coming from in that is, shouldn't it be the leader's job to do a lot of the coaching and mentoring?
Well, you've got to talk about scale here, right? You start an agile transformation across 30,000 people, and you've probably got, and you ramp up for that.
Yeah.
And you ramp up. So I've done this. You ramp up to maybe 100. Oh, I didn't.
Please stand by. We have some technical difficulties, and we're back.
So
we're back live with Niall.
You've got 30,000 people, and you're trying to get across that and mobilize the whole organization, right? And you start that, and you hire your whatever coaches, but you'll still have a very concentrated small amount of people that really have both the ability to be the subject matter experts, have the right mindset, and can execute the right moves as a coach to enable and mobilize the change. So I do think in a mature organisation that's over the hump of change, if you've still got 40 coaches, you probably have a very big organisation, like in the tens and tens of thousands. But if you've 40 coaches to 70 coaches is only needed to really mobilise and establish a system of work. You can take the word coach away and you could say consultant or implement. There's another large
change managers.
Melbourne. Well, don't get me started.
Maybe sorry.
Change agents. I'm just getting my iPad plugged in because I'm losing power. No, that's not an iPad. So yeah, it's a matter of there are a amount of people for what you're doing in the phase of change. So if you're mobilising and building the way of working, you'll need a lot of people on the ground. It's just simply span of coverage. Now, I want to respond to that person's comment with a challenge to yourself and a question. Say we've got leaders. So we've got leaders in the organisation who don't get it, and they're not leaders as coaches. They're struggling with mindset. I'm seeing a trend, Michael, where people are going, and we need to do the deep work. We need to do the mindset change, and we need to get them to have an epiphany about self-identity. And I'm just thinking, guys, it doesn't happen, right? Longitudinal coaching, where you're with a client for 18 months and you're taking them on a deep, integral journey of self-discovery to figure out the way they've defined themselves for the previous 10 or 15 years now needs to be let go of or held more lightly as you grow into this new version of who you are. Man, come on. We're doing a business transformation around agility. I haven't got time for people to reinvent who they are and refine their identity. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I'm being a bit provocative here on purpose.
No, and look, it's a hard one, right? Because I totally agree with cultural transformation. It's far more important. Like, agility is culture. It's a cultural transformation. I totally get that. But when I did my research on successful transformations for greater customer value, I realized very quickly, if the board were involved, which you kind of do need them to be involved for big transformations like this, there's a negative correlation. And then when I got deeper into that, I realized that the reason that is because there was no results. And you spend $3, $4, $5 million on some reports from a big four organization, and you start doing this coaching of the mindset. And I agree, it will work in 3 years' time, but that company could go under by then. So we're a big believer of Horizon 1, 2, and 3. Horizon 1 is pretty much, you're still focusing on the culture, of course you are, but you're knocking out the tools and process that allows you to reduce those inhibitions, those cycles of safety that allow you to feel less constrained, lower stress levels, time to market, adapt to your customer feedback. All of those done Horizon 1. Horizon 2 is about restructuring around the work. Horizon 3 is always about the leadership coming on a journey, just starting it back over here, but you're going to have to wait. I fell that trap probably like 5 years ago. I focused on the leaders, and just as I was getting there, those leaders said to me, and it was 2 out of 5 of them, I get it, Michael, and that's why I'm leaving. And I was like, oh no.
Hey, you've done your job, right? It's get off the bus. If you don't like this bus.
But do you know what's funny? They got it, and then I think one of them's an Agile coach now, and one of them's like a GM somewhere. I shouldn't say where, but what it is, they left for that exact reason, because they realized this is right. This makes sense. I'm not going to change the people above me's mind. Forget this. I'm out. So I've tended to find if you pull someone culturally towards a point and it's too far away from the mean of a culture of an organization, they just gap it. So you don't want to do that. You want a slow transition, like it's why it takes 3 years. But you won't see any results. So you need to push a lot of these, they need to pull, but you're kind of pushing, you know what I mean? Some of those early wins. If you don't get the early wins, you don't get the sponsorship, you don't get the board approval. You could get overrun by a whole new program of work. We could get Teal. Teal is growing in popularity. Suddenly, your showboat is over. So that's my view on that.
Yeah, I just think we're overdoing it a little bit on expecting people to rediscover who they are and have this big paradigm shift when really most people in leadership roles look, especially in some of the large, really heavy corporate environments, they're motivated by different things than teal organisations or Peter Senge's sort of models for learning.
Yeah, I think it was Michael Sahota. He was at Agile on the Beach over in Tauranga, and he threw me with a question, and he said, "But what happens if those leaders just don't get it? What should happen to them?" And I went into my spew about take them on a journey and everything else, and he never quite said it. So I don't want to say he said this. He probably didn't say it, and I was drinking at the time. I will point that out. But he basically was alluding to the fact that they need to go. And I thought, you know what? He's kind of onto it. Like, you put all this work to some people that probably don't fit where the organization's going. The vision
That's
of the
super interesting,
going.
Michael. It's super interesting you bring him up, because it was at one of his presentations where I started to form this opinion. Because they were going on and on and on about, well, don't even bother with an agile transformation unless you do a CAL course or whatever they're talking about, whatever they sell. And I just sort of thought, really? They've got to do your course first? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think a prerequisite for an agile transformation isn't the leaders doing a certified agile leadership course. It is what you just said. Get off the bus or get on the bus, have a growth mindset or have a fixed mindset. If this isn't for you, I'm not going to spend 18 months of longitudinal coaching where you're going to pretend that you're changing. I mean, I've done that. Don't get me wrong. I'm being a bit cynical, but I'm just trying to have a bit of a provocative chat about it, right? I've done longitudinal coaching in large corporates with executives, and it's been really enjoyable. And I've done that work. But I just find it's more the exception, and agile coaches generally don't get sponsored up into that space. It usually goes to sort of some of the more professional, full-time leadership type coaching people, which we do a bit of, but it's not our speciality.
The arrogance, though, for me, Niall, is in the fact that every organization needs to be this green or teal environment. And I say arrogance, and I mean it that way. So I'm in 2 ministries at the moment. Ministries. Like, they don't need to adapt rapidly to customer involvement. They need efficiency and probably a little bit outcome driven. So the leaders that don't suit these rapidly evolving industries, there's always places that they'll feel more at home. And you get me an agile coach.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, but you get me agile coaching.
So much agility, do you? Yeah.
No. So we do this. I think it's butcher his name now. Michael. He does the strategy maps. Anyway, I'll link it. Yeah, it's Michael Wardley. So I'll link it in the show notes. What I love about his one is I overlaid the red, amber, orange, green, teal, and that's pretty much my strategy of transformations. And I go, okay, where are you? Where's your competitive advantage? Excellent. You probably suit orange. Let's head for orange. Orange is where your vision should be at, and they're the type of leaders you need. They're the type of people you need. This industry, you need green. You need people-centered cultures. That's what you need. Okay, great. And I'm only advising this, and it's obviously always a journey. But if you get me agile coaching in the likes of Air New Zealand versus the Ministry of whatever versus an up and coming like Serco, up and coming tech company in New Zealand, I'm a different person, and they need different results. They need bespoke solutions, and this is why I highly recommend everybody buy this book. Because you can be responsive to the way you agile coach. You do not need to be planting seeds for 3 years' time in an industry that makes no sense. And you do not need to take the shite that you get from people. And for leaders out there, listen to this. Please don't hire an agile coach who doesn't focus on results. Please don't focus on an agile coach with no experience of actually implementing these things. Because that's one of the worst things I get. I don't know about you, Niall, but we are out of time, so I will slowly wrap this up. I could do this for hours, but I get frustrated. I'm always probably second or third in to an organization. I'm at the point where people go, this isn't working. Agile's not for us. I heard this Mikey guy gets some stuff done. Let's get him in to see what he thinks. And suddenly there's results, and it's not always me. It's normally I'm undoing Scrum. I'm known as the guy who removes Scrum from an organization because it's always implemented quite badly. So, yeah, that's just me. I don't want... Last question, and then we'll wrap up, honestly. Yeah,
it's all good.
That's not agile. Are the agile police giving us all a bad name?
Yes, that's the shortest answer. I don't see a lot of that lately. I think we have become, as a collective, a lot more. I think that dogmatism has moved out of. There was a few firms that were doing a lot of consulting that used to say, we either do it the way we want to do it or you don't do it at all. We won't take the work. I think a lot of the tier ones that are coming in now are coming in with bespoke playbook approaches. So they co-design and co-deliver into the organization a playbook for the way of working that is bespoke and contextual. Sure, it has some big rocks of IP in there, whether it's a QBR or whatever, right? But nonetheless, I think the dogmatism around what is and isn't agile, and the fact that we've all sort of realised the transition from an old PMO to a new one, and the transition from a project to a product-centric organisation, we've just relaxed a little bit on this whole, that's not agile. At least in the people that I work with, the people I hire, and it's all about pragmatist type view. And to say that's not agile says a lot about the person saying it more so.
Yeah, I tend to find the more IT I'm involved in, the more I hear that's not agile, Mike. Why are your sprints 3 months? I'm like, well, we're not doing a sprint for one, and that's because
Maybe we just need to replace it with a different statement. Maybe we just need to replace it with a different statement. Like the person might want to say, from what I know, that isn't supportive of an agile way to work. That would be a good way to say it, because it's not accusative. It's inquiring. It's curious.
Wouldn't it be good if agile coaches talk to other agile coaches with open questions to learn more?
Yeah, well, mate.
Okay, so I heard about a free module for a free course, a free module on your course. How do people get that?
I mean, when I wrote the book, my publisher said, and a lot of my reading says, we should build a community around your book. So I did that, and it's a passion project, Michael. And responsive agile.coach is a community I've set up, and we're running a massive and open and online course across the globe. We're just doing the pilot of the first module at the moment. We're just doing the pilot, at the moment. So you can responsiveagile.coach, So you can go in there and get involved. As I said, it's a not-for-profit passion project to build community and just keep me. I just like to be out and about in the community. It lets me know who are the movers and shakers and the people who have that growth mindset around the global community. So get in there and have a look. The other website you might want to look at is openagilecoaching.org, which is the information website. You can have a look at that there.
Cool. I am not fast enough to do this on the fly, so I will link that in the show notes. I'm getting faster. For those who watch every week at the moment. Awesome. So that's how people can find you. Are you open to LinkedIn requests?
Yeah. Go crazy. That's all good.
I love LinkedIn. It's fantastic. Last question for tonight. Have you had any major reflections since the book came out?
I put in the book something about social style, but after I wrote the book, I looked into it a bit more, and as a psychometric test and a tool, I've found it profoundly useful for us. Your social style is essentially how your personality affects what you say and do in social situations. Coaching social. So your style and your ability to have a versatility of your style is actually really powerful, and it's very closely aligned, but it's almost like a nuance on the model in the book. So I've been reflecting on that quite a lot, both personally. So I'm an analytical driver. So for me, Michael, that means I think of a solution and I start driving it out in quite a task-orientated way. So for me, that would indicate I should maybe consider expressing my opinions early, getting feedback, which is a practice that I've been building on lately, and how I wrote the book with the meetup community. So yeah, big reflections around my style and how I'm showing up.
Love it. Awesome. Do you have any reflections of this hour and 7-minute session?
I'm a bit worried about my talk to listen ratio. So probably might have invited you in a little bit, but I did try and throw some questions back at you, which is probably the best way to get some juice out of this, yeah?
This is always a problem when you have two coaches on the phone. It's like, no, you talk. No, you talk. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Niall. I've had a great time. So everyone else, I hope you've had a great hour-long session with Niall McShane. As I say, you can find him on his website or on LinkedIn. Feel free to add him. He's a great guy. I fully recommend this book. I recommend this book actually more for leaders. And that's because personally, that's where I see the market going. Good reflections I've had of this hour-long session is how aligned, I guess, some of the senior members of Agile coaching community are going forward, and how they are starting to realize that you can't be all wishy-washy, and you can't just be a practitioner of tools. There is a balance to the situation, and that goes back to situational leadership, and hence the reason why I recommend this book for any leader who is looking to transform their teams to greater customer and employee value. I thank you very much. This is Agility Matters with Niall McShane. See you guys later. Thanks, everyone.